Hello, welcome back to another episode of the ShefF1 Podcast. It's just me and Amy today, but we're going to be looking at the Italian Grand Prix. We're going to be reviewing it as we usually do. And yes, what a race. Just an incredible race all round. Of course, an Italian home victory for the man Charles Leclerc. Amy, first of all, what a race. What did you make of that?
I mean, it was so impressive. I did not think it was going to be at all possible, especially after him coming fourth in quali. Starting fourth on the grid with two McLarens ahead and even a Mercedes, which was looking faster than, of course, the Ferrari this weekend. I was so shocked that he could pull that off, and it's the one stop. No one else went for it, and the fact he could go so long on them tyres when everyone else was struggling so much, even Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, drivers who were world champion winners, could not even do what Charles Leclerc did. And yeah, it was just crazy from the Ferraris to even go for it. Once finally the Ferraris go for the strategy that got them the race win, and of course the McLarens were probably so much quicker. If Ferrari pitted, they would never have gone on to win that race, but they had nothing to lose. And yeah, it just felt so good finally, the Ferrari taking strategy into their own hands, not following what the rest do and just seeing what would be best for their team. And yeah, it worked out, so I'm just so happy. It was just, the scenes were incredible. No other driver that weekend, in my opinion, especially after the Sunday, deserved to win. And yeah, so impressive from Charles Leclerc.
Yeah, it was so impressive, especially just the lap times he was putting in on such old tyres. They were like, Piastri, it was like, oh, he was closing down, and it got to the final few laps. He wasn't closing the gap. Leclerc was keeping it consistent, and that was just incredible. It was such good driver skill, and especially when you compared it to Carlos Sainz, who actually I thought also did a really, really good job. But just comparing the lap times to the two of them, who I think both went for the one stop, Leclerc was miles ahead, and he did such an incredible job. And yeah, obviously the team, they were, I guess I don't know if you call it luck, but they obviously had the opportunity to just gamble on the one stop. Whereas for McLaren, it was a bit more, well, they had more to lose, and so obviously it would have been a bit weird if they'd gone for the two stop or the one stop, and then Ferrari go for the one stop or two stop, and then I've got that completely the wrong way around. But you know what I mean. They were going to finish third with Leclerc anyway, no matter what they did. So going for the gamble, seeing if they can go for the win. Yeah, it was perfect strategy in the end. And yeah, Leclerc, it was all on him. And also, I think we've got to mention the upgrades. Obviously, they brought upgrades this weekend, and I think even if they had gone for a two-stop, they seem to be somewhat in the fight. Obviously got a bit of luck with them McLaren's fighting at the start. But do you think these upgrades could see us in for a close, or maybe a three-way Constructors' Championship battle by the end of the season?
I don't think it'll exactly be a three-way championship fight. I still think it's going to be ending up being the McLaren and the Red Bull. However, I do think for Singapore and Baku, Ferrari will be at the top of the grid once again, fighting for it. I just can't see them being consistent enough. They just haven't all season. And yeah, I can't see it, but I can see them definitely finishing above Mercedes now. And who knows, maybe another win for, Charles or Carlos going into the rest of the season. But overall, even though the upgrades were good, I think that McLaren is so much more dominant. My dog even thinks so too. Exactly. But yeah, McLaren, I think it is going to be the main team going into the rest of the season.
Yeah, talking of McLaren, what an interesting weekend it was for them. I mean, there's so much to delve into here. Obviously, the first off, we'll start off with that lap one incident between Piastri and Norris. I've seen a lot of people online saying that Piastri was actually maybe in the wrong for that. Do you think that it was too big of a gamble for him to do that move, especially on a teammate?
I think Oscar was well within his rights to actually, pull off that move. He saw the gap and he went for it. At the end of the day, he's a racing driver, and it's within him to be selfish and go and take that lead in that race. And he did an incredible move, and I thought, good on him. But not on his own teammate. But what the hell were McLaren thinking to not even... Why is that not even a rule at this point? I completely understand if Piastri, lap 2, lap 3, lap 4, if he could see that move, go for it. But on turn 4, on the first lap, I just cannot comprehend why there are not team orders being put in place there. If Oscar is clearly the quicker driver, which I definitely think he was in that race, they should have let him go past Lando when, you know, the first lap had finished. And it almost compromised the whole team. Double DNF. Good job Lando was on it. Quick instincts. But I don't blame it on Piastri whatsoever. Piastri did exactly what he needed to do. If he's not getting told by his team to not, you know, if he's getting told, don't worry about it, fight your teammate no matter what the lap is, he's going to do it. Of course he is. If he can get a win, especially in Monza, he's going to do it. And that's what he went for, and it was so risky. And I don't understand when McLaren are so close. That weekend they could have gone with a 1-2 and a fastest lap above Red Bull and the constructors, and it would have closed the gap massively, especially with Verstappen starting so far behind. I do, like I said, I do not blame Oscar in this whole situation. He did amazing. What a move. However, I'm just so angry at Andrea Stella, because what are papaya rules? Fight each other with papaya rules. Don't fight each, like, they've got so much to have this season, and who knows what's going to happen next season. I think there's going to be so many teams going for this championship. This could be the only time where, you know, Lando could get a World Drivers' Championship, because who knows what's going to happen next year or 2026 when the regulations change. So why don't they go for it? And I've seen a lot of things that it may have something to do with Oscar and maybe his contract, because his management obviously is Mark Webber. He knows well and truly what it's like to be a number 2 driver, and whether it's in the contract that they can't be in the media known as number 1 and 2, they have to be equally prioritised on the track going forward from the whole season until it's mathematically impossible for Piastri to lose the championship. But I just can't understand why a professional Formula 1 team can't, you know, control their drivers. And, you know, it may seem a bit biased that, you know, Lando Norris is maybe more my driver, but I just kind of, looking back now, wished he took that win in Hungary.
Yeah, I think it's really, really silly from the team, as you said, especially on lap 1. Whilst everyone's so close from the start, that obviously opens up, if you make any moves on your teammate and maybe push them a little bit wide, compromise their line at all, it obviously opens up gaps for other drivers, and obviously Leclerc took that. And so they went from having a 1-2, a comfortable 1-2, because they both got away comfortably, to then, it's a 1-3, and it compromised any of their, you know, their strategy, their plans. They had to take gambles because of it. And it was so silly. And even if they weren't in a championship battle, it was still the wrong thing to do. And I don't blame Piastri at all, because if it hasn't been told, don't attack your teammate, then of course, it was a brilliant move from him. But still, McLaren should be saying, look, lap 1, until there's gaps for you to actually be able to fight, don't fight, keep it clean. You know, obviously don't compromise your own race by, you know, not just being quick, but don't put any risk in it at all. And I don't know why they haven't told him to do that. And I just feel, and I've obviously made it clear on here before, I'm not a huge Norris fan, but I do feel for him, because it almost feels that the whole time he's been at McLaren, he's been so loyal to them, and it always felt like they were waiting, and they were promising that, one day we will give you the car to be able to fight at the front and be able to fight for a championship. And how amazing it would be for you, Lando Norris, to win a championship with McLaren. And now he's got that opportunity, and they just seem to be throwing it away. They seem to not be caring about that. Whereas it felt like a couple of years ago, if they were in a situation, they would have been like, yes, we're going to support you, Lando, or we're going to give you everything we need. Whereas now it feels like they're just so confused about whether they want to help him or they want to help Piastri. They don't want to upset Piastri, but it feels like they should be able to take the initiative to be like, well, Piastri, you are the younger driver. You are the number 2 right now. You are not quicker than Norris. Yes, eventually you might be quicker, but right now, who's ahead in the championship? Norris. And we have to respect that. And Norris has been here for a lot longer. He's, shown so much loyalty to the team. You haven't shown that yet. yeah, I do find it baffling, and I find it very harsh on Lando. And yeah, obviously, you know, Lando shouldn't have to rely on his teammate to give him the championship. But at the same time, you know, it is a team game, and he has to rely on his team. And yeah, that Hungary thing, we obviously didn't make an episode on it, but I felt obviously wanted Piastri to get that win because I did feel like he deserved it.
Yeah.
But I don't think Norris should have given to it.
Yeah.
I don't think you would have seen someone like a Sebastian Vettel. Maybe Lewis Hamilton would have, you know, back in the day, like he would have given it to Bottas. But if he was in a close championship fight, I don't think he would have been giving that away. And I felt bad for Norris because they were really pressuring him on the radio there, and it just feels like a weird atmosphere in and around the team. It feels a bit of a calamity. It doesn't feel like they're ready to fight for a championship. And yeah, that I feel like that's the only reason that Red Bull have any hope of staying in this championship fight. And actually that leads us on to Red Bull. What a terrible weekend for them. Miles off in qualifying, and in the race, yeah, they couldn't make it up. I mean, what has gone wrong at Red Bull?
I just think they're not bringing the upgrades. I genuinely think there's no team morale, there's no leadership in the team. Verstappen is well and truly pissed off with everyone there. The way he speaks in conferences and with the media, he isn't happy there. And I think he may be regretting not taking that Mercedes opportunity, because it's very clear that they did try to go from earlier on in the year, with his management obviously being at the Mercedes motorhome at races at times. But he clearly tried to stay with Red Bull, and look at it now, it's really fallen off. And I just can't remember, other than Singapore last year when Max Verstappen finished in qualifying, what, 7th was it that he finished in quali? Yeah, I just can't remember him finishing lower than the top 3, never mind the top 5. So yeah, no, it's crazy to me that how clear, you know, the top 3 teams, which is not Red Bull anymore, it is McLaren, Ferrari and Mercedes. And I just think this is going to be, you know, it's going to be a slow, trajectory? No, it's not going up. Trajectory. But I think that's what's going to happen this season. I don't think I'm going to see any improvements. They go into tracks which they struggle on in the next 2 races. Anyways, I mean, Singapore last year was dreadful for them. And I just ultimately, I'm not thinking it's positive, and that is, as a McLaren fan, the only way I am kind of thinking that the constructors should be wrapped up, keyword. Yeah, and there is still quite a big chance for Lando if he is prioritised in the last races. So yeah, no, I really can't see anything changing. I don't know about you, but yeah, I think everyone's just fed up at that team.
Yeah, it's a weird vibe in the Red Bull camp. I don't know what to make of it at all. It's such a contrast. At the start of the year, people were saying how boring F1 was, how dominant Red Bull were under the hands of Max Verstappen, and now they're nowhere to be seen. And I actually will put in a good word actually though for Sergio Perez. I think he had one of his better weekends this weekend, and I actually think he probably could have been faster than Max at times in the race. He compromised himself to help Max. So yeah, I think it was actually a good weekend from Perez, and he actually came out and said, well, this is, you know, Verstappen's now in the same boat he has been for the last 10 races. If that's true, I don't know how that even works, but if that somehow there is actually any truth behind that, then maybe it does explain why Red Bull kept Perez. Maybe there was something else going on with his car. Maybe there was some sort of difference between the 2 cars that meant that, you know, Perez was struggling so bad, because it was, you know, we looked at Verstappen's performance this weekend, it was very similar to the performances Perez has been putting in for the last few weeks, and we've all been clamouring for him to get the boot. So I don't know if there's maybe something in that, probably not, because I don't even know how that would work. But yeah, either way, Perez a lot closer to his teammate this weekend. So yeah, I mean, that's one positive, I guess. But yeah, moving away from them, we will talk about Mercedes, the other of the big 4 teams. And yeah, an okay weekend for them. It could have been a lot better though. Lewis Hamilton in qualifying was incredibly angry. In his post-race conference, he was obviously asked, well, you know, what's gone wrong? And he said, well, I'm just terrible at qualifying. Do you think that's true, Amy? Do you think he is now washed and like his qualifying is awful now?
I don't think it's as good as it used to be. I mean, I don't even know what the head-to-head with George is, but it always seems to be that he does awful in qualifying and then comes back in the race. I mean, Silverstone's actually shows that, you know, he's out-qualified by George, yet he, you know, Hamilton was able to deliver on the Sunday. I wouldn't say washed. I just think he doesn't maybe understand that car. I just, like every driver said in the interviews after the race, they have no idea what's going on in Formula One right now. Like, every week it can be so different for a team. There's barely any consistency for any team on the whole grid right now. And for Lewis Hamilton, I think maybe when he makes that move to Ferrari, that it's not going to be that bad. I don't think it's anything to blame on his personal ability. I just think Mercedes are just so weird this season to me. I don't think Lewis is to blame, but he's not been good this season, that's for sure.
Yeah, it was obviously in qualifying where he ended up, I think, 2 tenths off Norris's pole time. And he himself said, he lost 2 tenths into turn 1 and another 2 tenths in the final corner. He said, realistically, if he'd actually put it together, he should have been on pole. But actually qualifying in itself, we'll mention that, all of the top 6 within a tenth, basically. I mean, that was super exciting. Do you think we can see maybe the similar results for the rest of the season, Amy?
Yeah, I think we're definitely going to see Ferrari and Mercedes up there with McLaren. I think McLaren are just well above them now. But I just think that's all 6 amazing drivers that are in them, 3 teams. That it is so close, and for a driver to go and get pole position really does show their own personal ability. So I think that's what we're going to have to base it off, and it could literally be anyone who gets pole position for the rest of the season now and we'll include Red Bull, but I think it could be anyone's pole position, which makes that so much more exciting, because last season that was definitely not the case, and this is, Formula One that we wanted back. So I just think it could be anyone's pole position from now on, with maybe a slight edge to the McLaren, but 1 tenth between all top 6 drivers is insane. And Lando was just able to go and pull it off.
Yeah, obviously Saturday's now looking super exciting in the future. We'll move on to someone who's not going to be racing in the next race in Baku. Kevin Magnussen picked up a race ban because he exceeded the 12 penalty points over the course of a year. It was for an incident with Pierre Gasly where they both went into, I'm not sure what turn it was, but they both went into it. Pierre was slightly ahead. Magnussen slightly locked up a little bit, went into the side of Pierre. They just bashed wheels, nothing much in it. Both went over the corner and just carried on racing. Pierre wasn't complaining on the radio at all. Magnussen didn't think he really did anything wrong, and he got hit with a 10-second penalty. And obviously penalty points. Do you think that was fair?
I think it should have been a 5-second penalty and no penalty points. I think it's absolutely not fair. But he's going to miss out on Baku for this. I mean, definitely makes it more interesting, who's going to be replacing him. But ultimately, I think, Kevin Magnussen is probably going to be his last season on the grid, and he's going out with a bang. I mean, it felt like it was almost going to happen this season because, he's picked up quite a lot. He's been insane in some races, but so entertaining at the same time. That it felt like, if he does a really bad incident again, that is going to be them 12 penalty points. But I felt like that incident was so unjustified for them penalty points to actually ban him from a race. That's where I don't think it's fair. I just can't believe it. But what do you think? It was on your driver?
Yeah, I think it was harsh. I think that it was just a racing incident. I don't think it was anything. If that's first lap, and I know obviously they're a bit more lenient with first lap, but I don't think there's even actually just a penalty at all there. He didn't gain any advantage. PS had the position straight away. Obviously it was a bit of a late move and he wasn't fully in control of the car. I can understand it, but 10 seconds is so harsh, especially when I think it was Ricciardo getting a 5-second penalty for something that was worse. Hulkenburg as well, or that on Tsunoda. There were worse incidents out there, but for some reason they gave K-Mag the biggest penalty. It feels a little bit like they were wanting to give it to him and maybe basing a little bit off of reputation. I don't know whether, obviously, they won't ever say that, but it did feel a little bit like that. But actually, in the end, it was a really good result for K-Mag. He actually drove a really strong race, quicker than Hulkenburg all weekend, essentially. It was a really good result coming home P10. I think he actually crossed the line P9, but with that 10 seconds, P10. So an extra point for Haas there. Coming home in P9 was Alex Albon. And Williams really, really strong weekend for them. Obviously, you guys predicted it. I actually said I don't think they will be that good, but shows what I know. They were really quick in qualifying. Obviously, Albon making it into Q3, qualifying P9, and then in the race finishing P9, and of course his teammate making his debut, Franco Colapinto. I was really impressed. What about you, Amy? Did you think it was a good performance on debut from him?
Yeah, I thought it was incredible. He gained how many places? 6 places, was it? Finished 12th,
I think so, yeah.
He started in 18th, and I was expecting maybe not the best quali. But, he had nothing to lose again going into that race, starting 18th. And the car really came to life. I mean, it showed with Alex as well to be able to maintain in the points. But, the overtakes, it was just so exciting to see, commentators talk about him, and we're very much team Logan Sargeant, but I can maybe see why they have replaced him now, especially if he can keep that consistency going forward for the rest of the season. Similar-ish tracks in Baku and Singapore coming up, so this could be hopeful, and who knows, maybe points going to come up in these last 8 races now. But yeah, and even his driving ability has impressed me, but his personality as well. I felt like he was a lot more comfortable on the grid with drivers and interacting with the media than Logan ever did in 2 years. So yeah, no, I'm really impressed by him, and he's really likable as a person. I didn't know much about him before, 2 weeks ago maybe, but I'm really enjoying him being on the grid, to be honest.
Yeah, I will say, I do think, obviously, we look back to Sargeant's debut. I think he had a really impressive debut as well. So, but he did have, a whole preseason testing behind him. So I guess there's a little bit difference there. But yeah, it does seem weird. Obviously, a lot of drivers on debut seem to be doing really well and then potentially falling off a little bit. Obviously, we saw it with De Vries with Williams, and then with AlphaTauri, we saw it with Logan Sargeant. We actually saw it in Yuki Tsunoda's debut season. Obviously, a really strong debut, and then for the rest of the season, he completely fell off. So I'm hoping we don't see that with Colapinto, but yeah, I'm going to take it with a little bit of a pinch of salt. But yeah, still really good debut. I actually thought he was going to do worse in the race than he was in qualifying. I thought over one lap, he might be able to put it together, but over a whole race distance, he might tire out. I think he'd only ever driven 8 laps consecutively in an F1 car before that, to then go and drive 53 or something like that. Yeah, I think it was really impressive, really good debut from Colapinto. And yeah, I didn't think he had any incidents basically the whole weekend, maybe one in FP1. And actually, talking of FP1, this is something we haven't put on our notes here. I completely forgot about Kimi Antonelli. I think we should probably highlight that, because Kimi Antonelli obviously has been confirmed as a Mercedes driver. No surprise to anyone. It's obviously not why we haven't made a video on it, because, I think we all knew it and we've discussed it in length on the channel before. But yeah, coming in for FP1, his first FP1 session, he was looking super quick, but then on his second flying lap, I think it was, straight into the wall. Yeah, what did you make of that, Amy?
I didn't think too much of it, to be honest. I think he just wanted to go for it completely. He's 18 years old, freshly, and he just knew, first time in F1, first time, in an FP1 session, he just went for it, especially at his home Grand Prix, and obviously knowing that announcement was coming, he wanted to prove a point, was faster than Lewis Hamilton in mini sectors, in the last sector as well, for the first 2 laps he did. But of course, yeah, he did crash, and I do think that shows inexperience, and but Mercedes can clearly see something. I don't think Toto would make this decision if he didn't want to. He's not being forced by anyone, and I'm just so excited for for him to prove something next season. Hopefully prove something, not as much as he did in that FP1 session, and takes his time. He's got a whole 24 races to do, prove himself next season. But yeah, I'm really excited for Kimi Antonelli to be in F1, and I don't think it was too bad of an FP1 session.
Yeah, it was obviously a bit disappointing. Would have loved to see him for that full hour, but I'm sure, actually at the end of the day, it was probably a good learning experience for him. Just knowing, how much you need to push in practice sessions compared to, how much you have to push in race. Completely inexperienced to all of it, and yeah, I'm sure he'll learn from that. Before we move on to looking at our predictions, obviously there's one final point we've got here. And it's actually about Alpine. We're going to touch on this a little bit. Obviously, if you watched, I think it was FP3, Nico Rosberg made a surprising point. He actually spoke about how he's been offered to buy the team, or at least a part of the team. Very confusing, especially when obviously Alpine have come out and basically said, no, we're not for sale, we're not for sale. The Renault Group, I think it's Luca De Meo, the CEO, saying, yeah, we're not for sale. Yeah, apparently Nico Rosberg has an email in which he can buy the team, and the team is valued at $1 billion, apparently, according to him. Think there's any truth in this, Amy?
I mean, Crofty was very surprised. He couldn't believe he was actually exposing that. I definitely think so. I mean, Alpine are just a mess right now, and I'm sure you can understand that more than most. But, like, it just, you know, celebrity ownership of stuff, when we look at it in football or other sporting terms, it seems really exciting, but it's not working currently at Alpine. I mean, we got to give it some time. But when, of course, that, like, whole bunch of celebrities, you know, Ryan Reynolds, Travis Kelce, Trent Alexander-Arnold, that they all are owners in the Alpine team, and like you said, that they're losing their identity a bit. You know, they're going to lose that Renault engine. Like, it just doesn't seem like that French team, and it doesn't seem organised whatsoever. However, Nico Rosberg, I love him, and I think he should remain not as an owner but as a journalist, you know, presenter, because he is amazing. Some of the questions he was asking this weekend to, you know, Andrea Stella and Zach Brown were, they really did well for my mental health, because this is what I wanted to scream at my telly, and he voiced them very well. So I think he should just keep going with that rather than be an owner at Alpine.
Anyway, now it's time for our favourite part of the video, where we look at our predictions. Yeah, we made them ahead of the race weekend, if you check out our last video. And so, yeah, we're going to go through them. We're going to start with qualifying, and yeah, we'll start with pole position. Rudy, who's obviously not here, said Lando Norris. I said Lando Norris. Amy said Charles Leclerc. So that's a point for me and Rudy. Are you sad about that, Amy?
Yeah, a little. I mean, I should have gone with Lando. I mean, I kind of knew that was going to be the case, but I had to, you know, Monza Magic, I kept saying, so I understood my choice.
And then we're going to move on to our star of qualifying, and Rudy went for something I would have loved to happen, Pierre Gasly. Don't think it was Pierre, out in Q2. And then Amy went for Charles Leclerc. I went for Max Verstappen. I think there's only one win here. I'm guessing it's going to be Charles Leclerc.
Feels a bit undeserved, but maybe a point. Yeah,
I think it definitely is compared to the other two. I think obviously Pierre outqualified his teammate, but both were pretty terrible. I went for Max Verstappen. I thought that he was going to completely outperform the car. Turns out he was a bit of a flop, which we'll get onto in a second. But yeah, I'm going to give the point there to Amy with Charles Leclerc. But yeah, we're going to go on to that flop of qualifying, as I just mentioned. Rudy went for Lewis Hamilton, which I think is definitely a shout, considering, you know, the pole was on offer. I went for Carlos Sainz, but once again, Amy, the mystical predictor, went for Max Verstappen, and yeah, I mean, say more about that, Amy.
Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty rogue one. I was very nervous to go with that option, but I just felt like pressure and the actual Red Bull car just not doing as well. It was a bigger difference than Zam thought, so it was a risk to go for it, but I'm glad I went for it, because Max Verstappen qualifying, what was it, 7th? That is absurd to me, like, genuinely. Him, like we were saying in the prediction video, Rudy was like, a flop for Max last season was not getting on pole, it was coming second, and now that 7th position, it's just a big flop. And yeah, I could see it potentially being a trend for the rest of the season. Maybe not that low, but definitely not getting as many poles as he is used to.
He's going to be the new Logan Sargeant at qualifying, I think. Moving on, though, away from qualifying onto the race day. And yeah, we went for our podium. And I think for maybe the second time this season, none of us got a single point. So Rudy went for Leclerc P3, Verstappen P2, Norris P1. None of those correct. He obviously actually got 2 of the podium finishes correct, but none of them in the right order. Amy did very similar there. She got 2 of the podium sitters right, just not in the right order. She went for Norris P1, Leclerc P2, Sainz P3. And I went for Norris P1, Verstappen P2, Piastri P3. So yeah, no points for anyone there. It wasn't even that of an unpredictable of a podium, I don't think. 2 McLaren and a Ferrari, but yeah, just none of us.
I think it's the positions of it.
Yeah.
I think, like, of course, Verstappen not even... I mean, I didn't go for Verstappen on my podium because I kind of was kept with that flop of quali prediction. But, you know, the fact that Leclerc won with McLaren looking that good, you know, that's definitely took a beating. I don't think any of us were going to predict Leclerc to win.
Yeah, and then we go on to our driver of the day, and two of us got this right, one of us got it wrong, and I got it wrong because I went for Lando Norris. Who would have thought going for Lando Norris's driver of the day prediction was incorrect? No, it was actually Charles Leclerc who got the driver of the day, and Rudy and Amy both went for Charles Leclerc. And yeah, I think that was definitely deserved. Any other shouts, do you think, in there for driver of the day, potentially?
Driver of the day, Piastri, maybe. I mean, he did everything he possibly could. It's just that he got outdone by the strategy. I mean, he was amazing in the McLaren, and he was catching Leclerc towards the end. But obviously, Ferrari were just too good. But maybe Alex Albon to be able to get points in a Williams is incredible, and it's not particularly a good Williams this season. So yeah, he's potentially a shout. But other than that, no one else really stood out.
I think obviously with the brilliance of Leclerc, I think it's definitely was Leclerc. But we'll move away from our driver today and on to flop of the race. And we've got, I think, maybe an interesting one here. Rudy went for Carlos Sainz, who he had an okay race. I think he had a good second stint, and he was able to obviously help Leclerc by holding up a Piastri a little bit. Amy went for Piastri, which is, definitely not the flop of the race. Although maybe you could say flop. He did have the race in his hands.
He did. I was going to argue it was all his, and he was almost very much even more of a flop by taking out both him and his teammate. Yeah. He didn't do that, of course, due to the actions of his teammate. But no, I don't think he is the flop. No. So he did well.
And I'm actually going to say that maybe I think my prediction was correct here. I went for Fernando Alonso. Did he really flop?
He didn't get points. And
he didn't get points, but yeah.
Aston Martin, even though they've not been the best of recent, for them to not really get points is disappointing. I'd agree. You got the point, Seb.
Yeah, I think I'll go for Fernando Alonso. I think my reasoning beforehand was that he's maybe a bit unmotivated when he doesn't have the best car.
Mm-hmm.
I think we didn't see anything special from him, and we know he can deliver special results. So yeah, I think that's obviously I think the point there. Then we go on to our best team. Now, this is an interesting one.
Yeah.
So, Rudy and I went for McLaren. Amy went for Ferrari. I think it's probably Ferrari, unfortunately. I think just being a home race, winning your home race, being in front of the Tifosi.
To take that gamble and it paying off.
Yeah. And I think it's got to be Ferrari. I think especially when you consider circumstances, McLaren throwing it away, essentially.
Yeah. And not, following papaya rules. If they potentially set team orders, it would have been. What it should have been for McLaren was an easy 1-2 and the fastest lap, and they should have got maximum points for the constructors and their leading driver in the World Drivers' Championship. But it weren't that.
No, and I think when you think about which team got the most out of their package, I think it's definitely Ferrari. I think P1 and P4. Yeah, I think that's the best they could have done with two incredibly quick McLarens. Yeah, I think it's got to be Ferrari. Even though, obviously, McLaren did have the best package, and they should have been the best team of the weekend, but no, I think we'll go for Ferrari for that one. And then we go on to our shot predictions here, and we've actually got two people in getting points this weekend. So, Rudy went for Colapinto debut points. Now, he did actually have a really good performance, but it was obviously a little bit far from the points. Obviously no points for that one. Amy went for Charles Leclerc win at Monza, and I went for Sauber not last. Now, the Sauber not last one is technically correct. They were the slowest team, though, and they should have been last. Obviously, Yuki Tsunoda DNF'd, and I think it was Lance Stroll pitted on the final lap. So I think Zhou overtook him just because he pitted. I don't know why he pitted. I don't know. I thought he was going to pit to try and take the fastest lap, but
I was like, he didn't.
So I don't know why he did that.
What are you doing? Don't take it from Lando. Trying to get Max the championship.
So technically, that is 1 point. I think that's probably all it is because Sauber were still the slowest team. Charles Leclerc win at Monza, though. Yeah, I think it's not the biggest shock.
Yeah.
How big of a shock do you think it is?
I think before the weekend, it's not a shock, but then watching an FP1, obviously the quali, and him being starting in fourth with the two McLarens ahead of him, you know, I think it is more of a shock when you look at it from maybe Saturday evening. And I think maybe just the shock of it all, you know, last time Ferrari won was 2019, and they've not, you know, they did bring upgrades, but the last time they looked really good in a race was in Monaco. So I think it's a shock. I don't think it's anything out the ordinary like a Colapinto win, but I think it deserves a few points.
Yeah, I reckon 3 or 4, I reckon.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I'd take the 4, but
you're
the adjudicator.
I'm not going for the win here in the championship. I'm miles off. If anyone knows what the point situation is. So,
I just need to
seeing
clear
as you turned up
Rudy.
today and not Rudy, I'll give you the points. So yeah, we're going to go 4 points for that one, and I'll give myself 1 point for Sauber not coming last. So
and I also brought a theory with it too. I said that, you know, due to the last time Lando won, the exact podium was, you know, the positions was, you know, Lando, Verstappen, Charles, and then obviously in Zandvoort that was the same podium. I was like, well, maybe it's just going to be like Monaco, and it was.
Yeah, I thought you said you brought a furry, and I was like, what are you on about?
A theory. Yeah, a theory.
So out of the points, I got 3 points this weekend. Pretty, you know, just standard for me, just terrible. But I actually beat Rudy. He only got 2 points. But then Amy, as always, just pulling away once again. She got 8 points. So yeah, we'll add those up. 8 for me. Not 8 for me. If only it was 8 for me. So Rudy's now on 40 points. He sits in second place. I'm on 35, so, you know, I'm catching Rudy a little bit. And then Amy's on 51, so, yeah.
Do you want to know? I'll give you some advice, Seb.
Okay.
You know the driver who gets me the most points is Charles Leclerc. Like, every time I go for Charles Leclerc, I think it was in Monaco where I backed him again, similar. I just, like, consistent with my choices. It worked, and it worked again this weekend, and now I've got quite a lot of points.
Yeah, and whenever I back anyone, they always do terribly. So, I just want you to back Gasly. If you back Gasly, then
all right.
Yeah, next weekend you've got to back him.
I did that a few weeks ago and it didn't work, but I'll try. I'll see what I can do. Thank
you very much. But yeah, that's going to be it for this one. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you all next time in Baku. Well, we're not actually in Baku, obviously, but
I wish.
We wish, yeah. But yeah, we'll do a preview for that one, so see us then. Hopefully Rudy's back then. If not, well, we'll just deduct him some points from the championship. So yeah, we'll see you next time. Thank you, Amy, for coming, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.